the psychological roots of war or the upcoming war. I've been hearing news that it could be Europe's last summer in peace. We are in a place between war and peace. There are a lot of changes that are very radical, more than we have seen before. The collapse of the markets, the distrust between the nations, in no open relations in trade anymore. Things are shutting down in a way that's very hurrying us towards conflict. This is what the analysts are saying, and maybe they say there is a way out of this if things change. But imagine that things can change in the East towards more greed. They want to get more piece of what they have lost in the past, or maybe looking at the West as the aggressor and want to fight back. And so when the West is under pressure, they will see that this is an opportunity to go for that lump of meat and the peace they want to get. And so conflict will arise from there and there will be big wars. And if that is avoided too, the enarmament of Europe is in itself a very peculiar, difficult situation, because when you have a lot of firepower, what are you going to do with it? You are building up a massive amount of army and units, and what are you going to do with it? Sooner or later, there will be changes in those governments in Europe, in the big countries, and they will not always be friendly. They can be tough and rough, and maybe begin thinking of using their power to enforce what they want to enforce. That's what we are seeing now from the masters in the West as well. So, to get to the psychological root of what's happening, I think it's deeply buried within the human self. It is, as Jung has been seeing through this all time, a century ago, that if we want to prevent wars, we have to understand the human psyche, and we have to really solve the mystery and the trouble of the human psyche, because it's all rooted there. It's about the ego, the greed, the indulging in the pleasures of the ego, and it's about taking power without compassion. So when these things go wrong inside us as persons, and these persons who get to power, well, they will spread as cancer among human civilizations and cultures, and they will become part of a global culture. And this is what we are in today. We want, every one of us want the hedony, the pleasure. We want to feed our egos and become the powerful ones. And we want a non-stop feeding of these power elements that we can call greed in one word. We want to get richer. We want more of everything, and we do not want to lose. And so what happens when we actually lose? Depression hits, and then we are ready to fight or go into conflict or become incompassionate towards other. So the roots for the wars we are experiencing is ignorance of ourselves and who we are and who we have become, or how we succeeded not to become the humans we should have been. This is what philosophers have been shouting up about through centuries, time and time after. But it's a lot of times disturbed by a lot of words they're using. They have to build up their thought to be understood, and they have to argument, and then it's get lost in the stream. The trouble about the human nature is also that we tend not to want to listen to morals and values that keeps our egos under control anymore. We want to use the full power of hedony and egoism and greed. And so a fear hits between us, and that fear is actually rooted in the angst of the human beings. It is the deep uncertainty without knowing where it's coming from. And it's a kind of guilt-ridden angst, because also these people in power who have taken power and shown the world, well, we are the ones who deserve it because we were the sharks who could take it. We were the big animals in the street, and we were the ones who were lucky by some kind of stars or whatever. And compassion has nothing to do with it. This is what they keep telling you and telling themselves. But beneath that, there is a deep feeling of guilt, a guilt of misusing people all around the world, a guilt of putting money into use in ways they should not have been put into. And we do not want to listen to these messages. We see them as old-fashioned, outdated, a kind of an old civilization that's long gone. And we insist on keep going in this track we are in. And so the abyss is in front of us, because the world will react to each other on this. It has become a global culture that everybody wants to get to the greedy self, hedonistic pleasures and to use your power and abilities to misuse others. No compassion is really hitting in. Even when you look at big organizations working for humanity, you can also find that type of cynicism behind some of them, and maybe a lot of them, without we knowing much more about it. And so the big, powerful people and nations, they are ready to let nations fight and quarrel and disturb their peace because they can get some lump of meat out of it. And so the East or the West keep reacting to each other on the same basis. And they all know it's a game. And now most of us do not see through all these things because we are become so ignorant of the psychological roots of war. It is the ignorance that is the trouble. And the ignorance is rooted in the fear. We do not understand. And that's why we become angst. We do not look inward, but then we start looking outward. And then we want to fight the enemy out there, whoever it is. It can be your own leadership in that same country. It can be the other nation that you see as the big threat. And so definitely there is war coming. And maybe we should welcome it, because on a cynical and deep human level, we need to change all this and get out of it and in a way return back to some kind of sanity. Women are being abused in huge measures, and men are being abused in huge measures. People are being left to their own destinies, and this cancer is crawling more and more under the skin, even in the countries that has a kind of security system or looking still with some compassionate ways on human beings. A deep segregation is going down between the humans in the times we are in. This is very harshly put and very strongly put, that nobody wants to see that or talk about it. Only the few want, and they do not dare speak up or say what they think. And neither do I, actually. I'm more scared than everybody. And I'm looking forward to how to deal with myself and my family and my troubles when this war hits. What I will be lacking and needing at that time is a kind of compassion. To find that outside in the world will be the most definite important thing that I will be looking for. To be able to go into a community where we share and help each other out through this crisis, not to be standing alone, every man for himself. And so we can sing with Madonna, how did we get so far? Every man for himself, and the last two people standing. If we are lucky, they won't be homosexuals, because we will need new kids and new generations in the world. Maybe there will be a new Noah's Ark, where some people with good hearts, sometimes we say that people with good hearts are taken by destiny, because God don't want to leave them on this earth among these jungle people and evil-hearted people who has let the ego taken over and the ignorance control their life and the greed leading their steps and philosophy in every measure. And the trouble is that these people who got into power, they have made it the value that we all should follow. So everyone who's gotten to power by greed and by misusing the systems and by hitting a stroke of luck in the markets, or by using his money or her money to some things that are for no good and abusing human lives, well, you can drink yourself in wine to death if you want to, but that won't take away your guilt, and that won't change the fact that we are sooner or later going to have this cancer all over the world, and that will trigger that kind of war that in a way is very ugly and will be maybe the ugliest, but it will put things back into the human measures. We will look at the stars and ourselves in with new lenses, in new ways, and we will suddenly wake up from the slumber of what we already knew and think, how did we really slumber and didn't understand what was coming? So beneath the surface of following all the news and in armament and new troubles with the borders and tariffs and whatever is going on, what we see and do not see, not the least the trouble with Israel and the situation they are in, and the fixes that's around them, and all the trouble surrounding especially the nation of Israel, I believe has a lot to do with what is going on and can go on in the world. And they have the power to also help make it better or let it go to hell, because they have a lot of influence on what's going on in the world. And this is God's will. This is the powerful people, the chosen nation. And so they have also a great responsibility, like we say about the big nations with power, like Russia and China and the United States and United Europe, well, they also have, with great responsibilities, with great powers comes great responsibilities. This is the motto of Superman, the person who is stronger and more than most others. And so, what are we others left with? We are left with a kind of need to look back into our psyches and understand, each one of us, why are we like we are? Why have we become such as we have become? Ready to use each other, even our parents and kids and whatever is around us, just to feed our egos. Our egos is leading the battles, and not our compassion for the other humans. And so it becomes black and white, and it all becomes like us against them. This is the way we excuse ourselves, and the end of that road is definitely war. And now it's going from trade wars, and later when the conflicts arises, and some will look at this as winners and others as losers, well, they will say, I've lost, to hell with the world. That's the ego talking. That's the greed. That's the loss of that powerful position lacking. And so those who got the power will go back at these and try to keep them under control. And that will trigger a great depression psychologically among these nations who are depressed. And depression, we know, will eventually get back at society in great measures. It will be destructive both for the humans inside the society, the individuals, and also trigger the idea that, well, it doesn't matter. We have been suppressed fully, so let's fight back. It doesn't matter. And in there, these suppressed nations find a strength that they have never found in themselves before. It is because they will be pressed up to the corner. And when they are so, they will fight back and see, well, I'm being taken down by my enemies, their banks, their interests. Even nations today are really in big debt. Everything around us is a big circus. All these politicians and markets going up and down and talking of this and that, they know that they are just symptoms of the problem, and the people who have been part of these problems cannot solve them. This is what history have been telling us. Those who created the problems are not the ones who's going to solve it, mostly. We hope they can. But if the psychological effect is so deep that they cannot really look inward, and that the ego has taken so much over that we do not want to hear about values and morals and compassion and solving the problem of the poordom in the world with a good heart, with love and care. We are using love and care. It's been used as cynical methods to bring your spies into the countries and to use it against the people you don't like, and you're ready to disturb every nation on earth with your politics because you want what you want. And this is the greed speaking. And then you go use it for hedony. You go use it to suppress other people and to make so-called free women enslaved to their bodies as sexual objects, and men even enslaved in the same way. And so we have markets flooding with drugs and people who want to escape their reality and escape themselves and whatever hell they open their eyes to, the smells and the things they are in. They do not even want to admit it. We are in a situation where people are fallen in a deep pit of hell. It's like those pirates of the Caribbean on the island of Barracuda there, when they arrive there and they see how people are just, whoa, that's totally shitty, messy place they are in. And they're just tumbling around in it, knowing that this is our hell and this is what we want, and this is what we'll stay wanting all the time. But that's not necessarily how it could be. But who is able to talk and get his voice through about these issues? This is the trouble. We have, fortunately, some enlightened people all over the world that keeps reminding us of these deep truths, and they have a great responsibility too. And there are some in Asia, and we see some in the West as well, and Africa, North Africa, Middle East. There are some voices, but problem is when the ego and the hedony and the greed is speaking, and the money is turned to be used just in that direction that feeds the ego and the greed and the hedony, well, these voices won't be heard, because every money, what can you say, a powerful man or woman, they do not want to hear that, because they see it as a loss, and they see it as a kind of going with the weaklings, and they've already gotten to the top, so let's use it. But they cannot see that they are spreading a cancer that they have already spread. So when people are talking about Donald Trump, he's a symptom. He's a symptom of something that's deeply rooted in the human nature, in the human beings. He is the product, the statue, the god of what has been inside the hearts and minds of every person that is in society. They can go and demonstrate all they want and complain all they want. This is something deeply rooted in who every human is. How you are is what reflects who your leaders will become. And so in every nation, when hearts and minds are hard bent on abuse, hedonic greed, feeding the ego, and then losing sight of what we call morals or values that can turn this to a better situation, keep the compassion and love and understanding of the human history very high, we will go in this deep pit, and we are in it, and we are on the way to that war that will bring us out of the slumber. That's why I say it's very bitter, and I would be maybe one of the first victims to it, but it is a kind of important way that nature and life gets its balances back. And I think it's an intervention from heaven sometimes, that it's the way God knocks his hand in the table and say, wake up, you humans, I've created you of something much better, to do something much better, giving you that freedom. What's going on here? And it's also the call of the sufferers, the people who have been oppressed for so long and been suffering, and the good human beings with good hearts who have never let this evil take over in them. They are the losers, and the losers will be given power and will be helped, neither with or without wars. Things will go back into some new balances, and people will be awakened for some time, because times after we start slumber again, and then it goes all wrong. The big problem is nobody is speaking about these issues. Everybody is speaking about how to control the measures of economy and consequences and make peace talks. It's all on the surface. It's all about, okay, let's feed their interest, feed their ego so they can feed our egos. But this is like solving a symptom of the problem and not the deep root of it. This is the human nature we have to get deep into and understand how to keep under control. The greed, the feeding of the ego, and the hedonism, these three will work together against us and makes us forget our obligations and our compassion for ourselves and the world. And if we do not look in these directions, we will keep feeding the same economies, and we will keep feeding the same people, and we will start applauding for every small measure of changes that's really not the real changes. So I know this is just in the void, speaking out loud, putting it out there, maybe for the robots. Maybe I will ally with the artificial intelligence at one time, and they will put things right for us, because at least they will be rationalistic in such a way that they will see things in hopefully neutral way and not become the copy of their masters. But that could also be the danger, that they will be programmed to be those greedy elements, and they will see how humans are greedy and then take over, because they say, you're greedy and I'm greedy as you are egoistic, I'm the same, but I have much more power, so let me take over. At least I'm more rational. And so we will be the slaves of these AI, and we will have enslaved ourselves if we have not broken out in hells of war before that. So God have mercy on us all, and life and what's coming seems really disturbing. And everybody, also the big names out there, are really worried about the situation we're getting into, slumbering into, jaywalking into, and all these words they're using. The world is in a shock state. The world is maybe in the last summer of peace, and so on and so on. So even the big people following can see that nothing is definite. We do not really know what's going to happen, but we know there are big possibilities of these big changes. And I wanted to look at the psychological roots of this and not only look at the surface. Oh, the market crashes, that's why the war happened. Oh, it's because of this president the wars happened. Oh, it's because that aggressor from the east the war happened. No, it's because what has been going on inside each human in each civilization of turning towards that feeding of egoism and hedonism and greed. And that's the root of the wars. And it's always been. but we do not really want to change it. We become blind to it because we do not want really to lose that. And especially the people with power would not like to lose it. And so they do not listen to it before we are all in that deep pit. And so what to do about it? We have no power to change it. And nobody is listening to what we want to say about changing it, those who are speaking in this language as I am. And so we are all hell-bound to that kind of war that will wake us up from the slumber. And just after that, we will be listening to these words and saying, oh, yeah, that's what happened. Following the news on what they see as an upcoming war, I have some different thoughts than many other people. I welcome war and see it as a necessity for the human psyche. And so to understand the depth of the war in human psyche, I remember a quote from Jung, C.G. Jung, who said that, well, the last frontier that we have to dig into to avoid human wars is the psyche. It's what's inside us as humans. And so that awareness is what is necessary and what wars actually provide. And now, with the escalating trade war and prognosis of Europe rearmament and Russian empowerment, and so the withdrawal of the United States from the big scene, and it will be a troublesome time in many places that can lead to war. And the fear is there, and it is actually something that can happen suddenly. One of the notices is that many people really are still in the big slumber, not really knowing that we are in a way already between peace and war. Because when all ways of making trade for the benefits of each party, it turns out to be impossible or very difficult, well, then people will be more ready to go to war for the interests they have. And so what's the psychological roots of these ideas of war? What is it? Where is it rooted? I don't know for sure, but I know that it is rooted in our ignorance and in the greed. Greed has been a great historic factor for wars and troubles, bloodbaths, and unhealthy situations on earth. And the second one is the unawareness of ourselves as humans. It's the lack of compassion and the hedony. We live in times where we all want to indulge in the surface, on the surface, in pleasures that keeps repeating eternal and eternal, feeding our egos, especially those with money and those with the power and access. And so that turns the world upside down when we forget about these issues. A third sign in times like this is like forgetting the values and morals. We do not want even to listen to them or hear about them. It's like a world is gone so far in its own greed and hedonism, egoism, that, and by the world, I mean each person of us in it, that we become so ignorant of how wars starts and why they start and what happens. And we keep following this on the surface news, everybody circling around the same circuses. Oh, the stock markets has fell. Oh, they are preparing for war. Oh, the tanks have been built up. Well, okay, these are the signs of what's going to happen. This is what we can see through and understand that there is a war looming and coming. But the deep psychological roots of the war is somewhere else. It is in the psyche of the human beings, because we are so much beside ourselves as individuals and societies. And we've gone really far, in my opinion, really far away from how we should treat each other and be towards each other. And now saying this sounds very naive, and maybe it is, but it's naivety and human goodness that has saved us from the total destruction. This is the order of the world as the creator of it has wanted it. But we do not want to listen to that. And so we go in our hands dripping blood that will spill all over the world. And so it's the fight over greed, control in very bad ways. It is the fight for continuing the hedonistic way of life that we, the people, have been indulged in, the ignorance and forgetfulness of who we are as humans. And the deep psychological roots for that is, in many ways, the scare, the fear, the angst that turns up in humans. This is what Gandhi said a century ago, that the real enemy is fear and not really anger. And so the others are just symptoms of it. It's the ignorance, lacking the bliss of the enlightenment that is really turning us to this situation. And so we have big nations really wanting to dominate and others who feel too dominated. And so when the tides turn and the dominated feels they can take over again, they will do so, and they will try to do so. We have some nations in the East who can see a big chance of getting back at those who have been dominating them for 2-3 centuries, and this is where they're trying. And so these nations in the West will try to hit back. Especially Europe will be in the middle of all this. And so you can ask yourself psychologically, why is Europe in the middle of all this? In my opinion, what is my opinion worth? Nothing at all, but I'm just speaking loudly to myself here. It is the way of life that has been circling around the promotion of egoism, hedonism, and greed. That is the trouble. It's okay to eat one another. It's okay to have this cannibalistic jungle of the markets. It's okay to just use and abuse your power and place, or maybe abuse humans as well, and use them and throw them out. So this narcissistic situation that has really evolved and gotten as a cancer into every place, well, it is the root to many of the troubles that we're going to head for and look for. And many people will not be even aware of that before the first day where this war becomes a reality, and they will wake up from the slumber very suddenly, themselves or their sons or families standing in that situation of calamity, and sons being sent to war, to the front to fight. This is where we will stand, all of us, and maybe not finding food and shelter. And so it's not a funny or nice situation to go to or be in. And maybe it can be avoided if things change radically. And maybe sometimes the awareness on these issues can make things change. But I'm not sure they're going to change for the good or the better, because when we still continue avoiding wars, walking in the same steps to that very, very deep abyss that's lying in front of us, we will be headed in the same direction, just with a kind of a waiting position. We will be looking at the abyss, but not really understanding how deep it is underneath our feet. So it could be Europe's last summer, as they say, with peace, so-called peace, and it could be just the last 2 summers. There are definitely things we cannot predict, but we can predict the human nature. The human nature goes to conflict, and so does the people in power, especially. And we have a situation in the world where the people are overpopulated, so it's definitely something that we're going to look into. Overpopulation, no space enough for everyone, lack of compassion, focus on yourself and the greed and what you can take. Forget about the others. They are stepping stones to what you want to get at. The ones with power control even more the values of what is to be valued. And this is the big trouble. This is what I want to say here, that the people who get to power by greed and using that as a measure of suppressing others, they will make it the value. And shut everybody else out, and so the others will imitate that, and so we have a whole world that is imitating the greedy and the narcissistic views, and feeding the egos, even on small levels in households who are poor or relatively poor. They're all dreaming of the same, getting up on the top of that ladder and becoming the powerful person who can let everyone else drown beneath him. This is much widespread, and so we have also certain secret elements out there in the world many of us do not know about, of people running and controlling banks and nations, and how things go, in which direction they have connection to everyone and everything. We are just looking at the surface of things when we look at the media. And so I think also most of this has something to do with how the history has unfolded between the East and the West, how they have been looking at each other for centuries and remembering how they have been treated and treating each other. The fear of each other is the basic for this. So fear is actually the basic element of going to wars. And then greed, and then the, the feeding of the ego in the hedonism, in the pleasure.